All right, so for this live code, we're going to start talking about creating simple objects and how to do that, so that we can start delving into making games. Okay, so in the live code sessions, you guys could click and you guys should be able to grab the file, download the B file. That's what we're going to do. I already have it on my desktop, so I'm just pulling it. We are going to create a B. Okay, so I want to rename this. I'm just going to call it b.png. Okay. So creating a simple object, we can think of this B that we're going to create as having certain attributes. Instead of them all being separate, me having an X and a Y and a speed and all that stuff, I can have that only inside of the B itself, and it kind of better organizes our code. It helps us to start thinking about object-oriented programming instead of what we've been kind of doing, which is like function-based. Okay, so we can still declare them by using the let keyword. Okay, the difference is that inside of here, when we set it up, the syntax is a little bit different. We would assign it using the assignment operator, but then we use a code block, and then everything inside this code block is a part of the B. Everything inside here is a part of the B. Okay, so from here to here, so everything that we need, which would be attributes that they have, which might be a position, size, color, shape, movement, health, strength, attack strength, all of that stuff. And they may have abilities, like they're able to update, they're able to display themselves, they're able to add health, they're able to take away health, they're able to do an attack. They're able to move, they're able to check against the edges of the canvas and stay inside of those boundaries. Okay, so those abilities are functions, and that's stuff that we are going to build into here. So let's start kind of designing this out. All right, our B is going to have an X, and whenever we do an attribute, attributes and abilities, when we define them, they're always going to end up having they're going to be separated using commas, and when we're doing attributes, we're always going to be using colons. Okay, so I could give it a random position. So let's say I want to just start this at the middle of the screen. That is my first attribute. I'm going to separate it by a comma. I'm going to add another attribute. I'm going to separate this by a comma. I'm going to give a size. Maybe I want it to be 50. Okay, so those are basically my attributes. Now, I want to display. So in order to write a function that's going to be a part of my B, then I'm going to write it the same as what I would write this, the name of my function, except I don't have to use that keyword function, and it's still going to have a code block. So inside of the function, syntax is normal. Okay, so I might want to display my B as a circle, and I want to use this X and this Y and this size of my B to display it. So I'm going to use the keyword this to let me know that I'm referring to not just any X, but this X, this X. Oops. What happened? This X, this Y, this size. Okay, now, if I try to run this, yes, I created an object, but it's not going to do anything, okay? Because the B, it's there, but inside of the draw, it is not going to be called to do anything unless I call it. So if I want the B to display itself, I need to use the dot operator and say B, that's the object, dot, and then I can call one of the functions, in this case the display. Display. Finish it with the semicolon. There we go. There's our B. Now our B doesn't look very pretty. We might want to actually use this image so we could play around with that. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. That means that we need to do a preload. And I'm going to call this B image. right, this is all stuff that we've done. Now, if I want to display, instead of doing this, I'm going to comment that out, and I want to display the B image. So I can say B image. Where do I want to display it? This.x, this.y. Okay, and for images, again, remember we have to give it a width and a height to display it. So I'm going to say this.size, because I want the width and the height to be the exact same. Now if I run, there's my B. Okay, I think it's maybe a little bit small. Let's increase up the size. I change it here, it's going to also change it there. I rerun, there's my B. Now notice I did width divided by 2 and height divided by 2, which is about the middle of the screen, but the B's over here. That's because images are drawn from the top left. So in my display, I could say, you know what, specifically for my display, I want to do things a little bit different. Okay, and that is useful to start using push and pop. Okay, anything inside of these will not affect the rest of my code, which means I can take this and I could say image mode and put center in there. Now, if you have not learned this in any of the projects, this will change our image mode to display from the center of our B, and now he's centered. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Well, we can minimize that display because we basically have it. We have his X, we have his Y, we have his size. Now what do I want to do? I want to add another ability. So I'm going to put a comma right here because I'm separating out abilities and attributes, and I want to do an update. And my update is going to be changing my my position, my X and Y, by some value. Okay, if I just take this.x and I do, say, ++, let's watch what happens. Nothing, because again, I didn't call the update. But if I come down to my draw and I say, you know what, I want to update my B, and then I want to display it. And it is important to start getting in the habit of thinking of what is changing first. So since we're updating first, we update, then we do a display. Now my B is moving. Okay, this is called a postfix incrementer, which just means it's going to increment up after I use this. Okay, now I actually want to make it so that it's maybe doing a little bit of randomness. So maybe I want to say this.x is equal to, or how about I'm adding a little bit of random to it. So let's say I add -2 and 2. Let's see what happens. Oops, it's not going to be this.random. There we go. Now it's like he's kind of buzzing. There's actually a different way to do this, and this is called Perlin noise, to get a little bit better of a randomness. So let's quickly look at that. This is Perlin noise. Okay, now Perlin noise ends up having it's randomly generated when we start a sketch, and then it's stable. Now what we can do is we can actually move around the noise that was created, either vertically or horizontally, and that number will change, but it will not be a random number. It's going to be close to the previous number, which will make it so that it will look more fluid, which a B will fly a little more fluid. So we're going to change some stuff. We're going to actually add another attribute. I'm going to call this X offset, and we're going to start at 0. We're going to do Y offset, and we'll start at 0 right here. So instead of here, I'm going to say that I want, now the noise values, when we pull a value, okay, anything that we use with noise, doesn't matter what we're putting in here, okay, the larger the number changes or the faster the number changes, the more that noise is going to have us where we're not right next to a value. But the value that we're going to get when we plug that in is always going to be between 0 and 1. So we're always going to have to magnify it by whatever our width or height is. Okay, so if I just do noise and I get this X offset, and then I'm going to multiply that by the width. What's my error? X off is not defined because I gotta say this, that X off. Okay, now I don't see anything right now. Because I could have added something a lot larger. So let's just actually set our X value to that. Now it doesn't look like it's changing. But this value could be if I put it in a console and I just printed it off just so we can see what that looks like. 247. So if I was adding that to half of the width, yes, it's going to slide it over. But each time I rerun, it is moving me over. Okay? So I can play around with these values. I could even take this and I could map this if I wanted to make sure that I'm staying always within the bounds. So I could change this, and we'll play around with that, but we want to do an X and a Y. So I'm going to do this first. Let's do a Y, Y, and then this is the height. Okay, now if I run, we're randomly kind of moving around. Now my X offset and my Y offset, they are growing at the same rate. They're all 0. So if I don't want it to be on a diagonal line, then what I need to do is I need to take this offset, X off, and I want to add some small minuscule value to it. Now the smaller the value, the slower that I'll move. The larger the value, the larger that I'll move. So let's do X off, 0 point. And now if I have it the same number, let's watch what happens. Oops, I did X off and Y off. Okay, see how it's doing diagonal? It's because they're the exact same. But if I make it, say, 2, now it's like we got a B that's moving around. If I do smaller numbers, I'm moving much slower. If I do larger numbers, I'm moving much faster, which we don't really want. So we kind of want like a good balance. Now if I was building a click game, this would be pretty interesting. Trying to click it because I can't predict the movements. Okay, so inside of everything, this is my B. Now if we're looking in terms of organization, look how clean that is. I have one function or one simple object being created, and I just call its update and its display. Now I could add more stuff to check if I'm colliding with the mouse, if I click on it or I do something, but now I have a B moving around on my screen. If I wanted to create another one, so we got one B, let's do B2. How would I do that? Basically just copy this whole thing. There's my second one, B2. Now it's the exact same position because I have the exact same growth. We need to actually call it down here though. So we're going to take this and we're going to paste it. And we'll change to B2. Let's rerun. These are growing at the exact same rate. They're changing at the exact same value. I could put different values here of what I'm going to do as my initial setup. That would make things different. So if I did minus 100 as my initial position for B, let's make sure that we got something going on. I'm going to comment out first B. There's my other B. It's still in the exact same position because that only gets set one time. It's this, the update, that's going to be changing. So my B2, let's say I change it by 3 and this one by 1. There's my B's. Okay. Because we are setting the values right here. Multiplying by the width, this is a value that's between 0 and 1, and we multiply by the width. Now if we were changing this, again, random would not look so good. Okay, so let's do B1. I'm going to comment out these two, and then I'm going to write them with random so we can see how much different they are. I want a random value from 0 up to the width for x, and a random value from 0 up to the height. Now if I run this, one B is going crazy, the other one looks like it's doing more normal movement. Okay, so random sometimes is pretty good if we want just a random value, but if we want something that's kind of close to the values but it's still random, then we want this instead of this. More natural movements. Two cute little bees. All right, good luck, have fun.